Welcome to episode 13 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
And I am Paul Page.
And joining us this week is Nate Hughes in Phoenix, Arizona. You guys may know him from the Football Neophytes podcast. How's it going, Nate?
Great, guys. It's a pleasure to be on the pod tonight.
Explain how you started your podcast and then how that led to supporting Wolves.
I'm a huge sports fan all around. I have teams for everything, but never really supported any club teams. AC Milan is like my childhood club team, but never was into Premier League. I lived in Europe for 7.5 years, and I every day pretty much regret the fact that I didn't have a Premier League team when it was like a $50 flight away. Coming out of the World Cup, what was that, 2018, I think it allowed me, since the US wasn't in it, it allowed me to just enjoy it and just follow players and storylines and teams. And coming out of that World Cup, I thought, you know what, I should choose a Premier League team, be super fun. So you do all the little things. You get online, you look for which Premier League team am I, and you take a quiz and it tells you you're Chelsea or Manchester United or whatever. And then I found a really old article on ESPN from 2003 that was really detailed and walked through how the author chose a team. But I'm like, this is outdated. And I was like, it would be super smart. I grew up basically cheering for my family's teams or the university I went to. It would be fun to choose a team using whatever logic I choose, but watching an entire season and choosing a team. So then I thought to myself, maybe I should blog about it. I was like, no, I'll be too lazy. It takes too much time to write. I'll be lazy about it. I'll start it and never finish. And I'm a big podcast fan. So I thought, why don't I start a podcast? Call it Football Neophyte, and I'll have 20 episodes, and I'll interview a fan from every club and have them try and sell me on the team. I'll watch the club that week. I'll have them tell me who I should focus on, watch the club. And I set up a couple of parameters for myself. I couldn't choose the team that won because I didn't want to be a front runner for whatever team won. And then naturally, I also couldn't choose a relegated team because I wanted to watch the Premier League. So it eliminated 4 teams from the top, not knowing who they would be. So I went through that whole process, and I ended up choosing Wolves. But even, I think probably more importantly than that, I just grew to love the Premier League. And I feel like, other than Manchester United, who I don't think I ever really gave a fair shot, every team got a fair shot. I really tried to buy into every team. And that became really fun too, because then you're rooting for a random club every week. And it really shows how the results of particular weeks really affected who and even how I ended up choosing Wolves, because the week I focused on Wolves was that epic 4-3 victory over Leicester City. Just an amazing finish, amazing win. And so there it is. And the people I interviewed really helped too. And this guy named Luke from the Wolves fan cast, he was my guest and we got along real well. And he made me laugh a lot. And all those factors came together. And then obviously the club and lots of different things, but chose Wolves at the end of the year.
I think a lot of old-time Wolves fans would say you're a masochist. What would you say to that?
I could understand that sentimentality, but I've only known Wolves in the Premier League. So in some ways, I think maybe this weekend is my first feeling of true hope dashed. I think I really went into this weekend thinking we got a shot, but it was
not so
ill-fated.
Yeah, this weekend was very Wolves. It's interesting that about that Leicester City game, as that was very un-Wolves-like. Typically, it is giving that 2-goal lead away and either drawing or losing right at the death and not winning and not having someone score a hat-trick in the Premier League in the first time forever. That was very Wolves unlike as well. So purely the stars must have been aligning for you, Nate.
For sure. And I think I have a bit of a proclivity to choosing the non-traditional routes.
Absolutely.
And so I think a non-top 6 club always had a shot to be chosen. And then the Wolves had there's rags to riches in some ways, having really come from League Two, not too distant in the past, and being a newly promoted team, there was some hype about that. I joke that I don't like the colors of basically any team I'm a fan of. So I really wanted to choose a team that was blue. That was like in my intro, like first episode. It's like blue teams are going to have a huge advantage. And I love Wolves kit. And I know, again, like I'm such a non-traditional fan, and please don't kill me, but it's hard to get around the old gold. As a just general color, but here it is. I proudly wear it, and I'm definitely a full-on Wolves supporter.
If you're a fan of blue, what'd you think of the away kits that they wore on Sunday?
I can't handle them. I know it's so ironic in the end that I think I understand why they did it. It makes sense from a marketing and even like the rollout. When I saw them and I saw like their marketing behind it, I was like, this is smart, because I understand this is in this kind of like street style, but not for me. As much as I try and act younger than I am, I'm not that young anymore to get behind them.
That's a pretty awesome story. And yeah, the podcast is a lot of fun. We really enjoy it, I know. So let's go ahead and talk about that game. 4-0 Liverpool. Ugh. It was rough. It was rough. Paul, I saw you wrote show notes, and I'm just going to let you vent right now because I feel like you need that release.
I do. I've actually come out of a slumber just for this podcast, because it shouldn't be till Wednesday, probably Thursday this week, that I can actually look back at it in any type of I don't know, it just back to the bad old days. What got me is there's no fight, and that was a very un-Wolves like thing, that I think the formation didn't really help, or the setup within that formation. Whether we gave them too much respect in doing that, I don't know. It was an error for their goal up until that time, and for the rest of the first half, I thought it was fairly evenly matched, and Podence had a great chance, and Traore looked to be causing some trouble. But there was just never that real killer instinct or real urgency to get at them. And when that second goal went in, you could have just drawn a line under it right there and then. And they seemed to lose all heart, and it very un-Wolves and very disappointing.
Yeah, let's talk about that second goal, because, boy, what a reverse of fortune. It looked like Cody was going to score there in the box. It looked like he had it, and then 40 seconds later, they're scoring the goal to go up 2-0, and that felt like that was it. You mentioned the lack of fight. I think part of that was Cody, because Cody got so down after that first goal, and then when he missed the second goal and they turned around and scored, the team goes as he goes. Would you agree, Nate?
Yeah, I think you've got your captain, who's obviously, and I think that's been the joy of watching without fans, is you hear him in all these matches, right? Like you just hear him constantly chirping at the guys and leading and guiding. And you saw some of that last week, I think, with Arsenal, just guiding and leading. And when he has such a blunder and such a mistake, that takes the wind out of him. And then I think we can't discount the fact that Raul's not on the pitch. He's obviously not as vocal. But he is your star. He is the star, and he's the scorer. And so you've got Cody on one end of the pitch making such a huge mistake, and then no Raul up front. I think both those two things combined, I think that's part of the reason we didn't see much of that fight.
Yeah, I think we all, at least last week for Paul and I on the podcast, really underestimated how much they would struggle in the final third without Raul there. There were some great crosses that were coming in. There was just nobody there. Or when they were there, it was Donk, and he's been really off on headers the last two games. So There's a reason Raul is all world, and sadly, this was a reminder of that this week.
I think that's really valid that you say, Nate, that those leadership qualities, it's not the shouting and cajoling. Raul's such a leader in terms of performance, and that everyone follows him, and his work rate's phenomenal. And exactly where he got injured, puts his body on the line, defends that near post like no one does. And it's when you do have such an integral part missing from the team, both as a player and as a character, it's going to take its toll. And yeah, I think that was sorely missed. And to that point about Dendonka, Josh, I just think that he's got to step up his game now. If he's that player that we're looking for in midfield that's dynamic and can get box to box, he's got to start doing something in terms of the opposition box and goal scoring, because that's 2 goals that he should have really had in the past 2 weeks. And if you haven't got that and he has an off game, what else is he bringing to the side? I love him. I think he's a great hard worker, but has he hit a certain ceiling that he's not going to go past? And we need to get someone better in his mold that can add the finishing touches when it comes to the opposition penalty area, because it's another game where we didn't score. We had some chances. We need that killer instinct. We're not scoring goals this season. We're letting them in, and that's something that we need to correct pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think Donk's in a really weird spot right now because Nuno has shown if you don't capitalize on opportunities, he has no problem taking you out. And let's remember, Donk had that first opportunity to replace Bali when Bali was hurt last year in the back. Didn't do a good job. It was actually Saiss that took over. Donk's never been my favorite. I do think he's a solid player, but I think you're going to start hearing a lot more calls here unless Donk can turn it around once the January window opens to, hey, we need another box-to-box midfielder.
The question will be, though, like needing to replace Raul in some ways, like there's only going to be so much opportunity in January, right? And so now you add another wrinkle to the equation by you assume they're going to need to replace him or do something. So then are you able to replace him, put someone else in there besides Dendonker? And then the timing of this is really, all of it's really bad because the December is, I'm not certain there's a more difficult schedule in the Premier League. I know teams have more matches if you're playing Champions League, and that adds a level of challenge. But within the Premier League, it's a very tough schedule for Wolves. And so it'll be interesting to see even where we fall at the end, or where we land once December is all said and done.
That was a little bit where the disappointment occurred for me yesterday as well, because I was going into that game optimistic and I was looking forward off the back of the Arsenal game. That was a really good performance against adversity to see where we would be against Liverpool. And it happened exactly the same when we've had it previously this season. There was some momentum going into the Leicester game. Boom, we lost. And we didn't prove ourselves. Momentum going into yesterday's game, chance for some guys to step up and prove themselves, and we got pumped. And there goes the momentum again. So it seems to me that we once had that aura that we'd come up against a team in the top 4 or top 6, and we'd be a challenge for them. And especially in the first season, we'd often go on to beat them, and that doesn't seem to be happening anymore. So that's sad in some way that we can't seem to go to that next level and pick up points where we need to, but then go to these types of grounds and at least get a draw and prove that we should be in that conversation for the top 4 to top 6. And as it stands this season, we're losing that momentum.
Can I ask you guys a question? As a neophyte to the sport, and particularly the Premier League, I know there's not a lot of opportunity or grace given to these teams to rebuild or retool, but the more I've thought about this season as it's gone on, you're seeing these hits, like you said, Paul, of like beauty where we look really good and start gaining some momentum, and then you see a big drop off. And Nuno throwing lineups out there that are like changing every week, which that little that I know as I've followed the last few years, he doesn't do. It's here's what I do and I stick to it every week. And so I wonder if there's I don't want to throw the season away yet, certainly. But I do wonder, with so many new faces in, so many new faces out, a lot of youth, could this be a season where we say, you know what, it's okay if we finish middle to lower middle table in an effort to really figure out who this next Wolves team is. Let Nuno try. He says he wants to be more attacking. He wants to have more possession, which we've seen like little fits of. But is there I know there's not a lot of space, but is there space, even just for you two, is there space for a year to say, yeah, we can finish 13 if the final couple months show a lot of promise for taking the next jump next year?
So I know we talked about this at the beginning of the year because it did seem like with their strategy that they had with the summer transfer window that it was a lot of it was looking towards the future when you get a Fabio Silva, when you get a Vitana, and then even with Eight Nori. And we thought of it as, well, maybe Wolves are just gonna let's see what they got here. Let's get to January, and then from there they can decide, okay, are we in it? Do we need to make another move or two in January, or are we going to finish middle of the table and then we can start focusing on some of the young kids? I don't think that's a bad situation. I feel like the only downside to finishing mid-table would be the possibility of losing some of the stars. I don't think we have to worry about that with Raul right now. So it'd be just Adama, and I still think Adama's a different cat. I don't think he'd leave unless he's 100% comfortable for the situation. I think, Paul, you think along similar lines, right?
I see it either going that way that Nate describes, or they do click. And we've said on this show, and other kind of commentators have picked up on it, that seems it's a weird season, not much of a pre-season, no friendlies before the season got started even, that this team needs to form and it needs to gel. So will this first half of the season have been that, and it all comes together, and December, we ride through December and we're handily placed, but suddenly it clicks and we put 3, 4, 5 wins together, and suddenly we're looking like the team to beat, and there's a ton of upward momentum. Hopefully, if you're glass half full type of guy, that's what we're looking at. But I'm probably of the fan persuasion. Yet I don't mind if it is that season of consolidation, experimentation, blood some youngsters in the plan of looking stronger next season. But then you've got to temper the expectations of the rest of the fan base as well, that after 2 7th place finishes, you may get a lot of discontent. We should have done better this season. That you have to weigh up the pros and cons of that as well. But as an individual fan, I think I take that this season, if there's a master plan in place, that it's a building block to go better in the next upcoming few years.
And the Raul injury has to play a role in that, because no team expects to lose their star striker. And so depending on what they can do in the January window could really dictate what direction they go.
Yeah, and with you bringing that up, Paul, you want to get to this week's No Stupid Question?
Yeah, we had one this week from our friend from Houston Wolves, Stephen Williams, who's in Richmond, Texas. And he asks, how do we address the striker situation? Do they stick with Silva, or do they look for a loan signing? And I'll carry on my thread from yesterday, is that regardless of the formation that they'd have thrown out yesterday, be it 5 at the back or a 4-2-3-1, that team needs a striker, needs a point person. If there's 3 players playing behind him, they need that focal point, someone that they can play off. I think a big chunk of Podence's game is having that interlink play and being busy around the box, linking up with someone. So I think that's crucial. We've got to have at least someone up there in an attacking mold, because I can't see a false 9 working at all. maybe Neto. I thought it was surprising a little yesterday that Neto wasn't the main man as taking that number 9 role that could play off the shoulder of the last man and use his pace a little bit, because he's got the skill and everything else to complement it. That was a little surprising for me. But yeah, we do need someone. Whether Silva, has he still got to earn his trust? Has he still got to go through the Nuno waiting period? That it might be even longer for him because he's 18 and he's a kid, and this is a ton of expectation thrown on his shoulders,
I mean,
regardless of the transfer fee. So
yeah, we say that, but then look at Eight Nori and look at Neto.
True.
Both of them, 19 years old and getting in there. So I don't know. What do you think, Nate? Is Silva the guy, or what move would you make in January?
I don't know if we've seen enough of Silva, to be honest. Spots here and there obviously came in and then came out. The Arsenal match, I would love to see. I'm like an experimental type guy anyways, so to me it's not that it's not a throwaway season, but losing Raul has huge implications, and I believe I'm sure they're working to find a replacement for him. It's just a matter of how much they want to spend. They get the right person, can get the right guy. But we've got 5 matches, I think, left before that opportunity even opens up. So you got to try some different things. Yeah, I think I would have put Silva in yesterday and given him the shot to just step in. That's what we've heard this whole time, is he's not getting any time because he's there to replace Raul. And Nuno plays Raul 90 minutes, and so he's not getting any time. I'd love to see him start. Take him out after 60 and change it up if you need to, but give him a shot. And yeah, I agree, Paul, that there's not that center focal point. Traore likes to take it around. 9 times out of 10, he's going to go down the wing. He's not going to move the ball back into the center. Like, he loves to just burn a guy on the right and then
go to the
cross
byline.
it.
Yep.
And Podence and Neto will, but I think we need a striker who will sit in the middle and be that focal point that everyone can put the balls into. And I would give him the shot. I'd give the youngster the shot and see what happens.
So here's something I've been thinking about it all weekend, as far as, okay, who would you want as a target? Because it depends. If you're thinking Raul can come back, you don't want to bring in somebody in January who's going to be high priced and then be sitting on the bench when Raul gets here. So the name that came to my mind was Rafa Mir. He's doing pretty well in La Liga right now. All you have to do is recall him from loan. Might that be the solution? Is somebody that's technically already on the payroll?
I think that's a stretch personally, because he wouldn't be where he is now if that was the master plan. I think that we have to look at our recruitment twofold, that you get first 11 or certainly squad members that are purchased for that particular function, but 3/4 of the time our signings are made in the hope that one may come off, and suddenly we've turned a £1 million investment into a £30 million striker. What the hope is for the likes of Mir and probably Campana, who's also on loan, is that you turn in that £1 million purchase and maybe that turns into 3. So you're getting a return on investment that way. But it's interesting, because again, I think we mentioned it last week, that there's even no one in the under 23s that could take the step up. There's not Silva is the only one that's in the Raul mold. There's no one else. And again, he's so crucial to the way we play that we need to think long and hard and pretty quick about what the contingency plan is, both short and long term.
This shows I don't know the lower parts of the organization enough. I don't even know what position this kid plays, but that Luke Mattinson, Luke.
The right back.
Oh, is he a right back? Is that a position?
Yeah.
Okay. I just remember signing some guy last year from.
No, I think he's one of those guys that we'll probably hear from in a few years. But yeah, unfortunately, sits on defense. Not much on offense, which I still think defensively will be okay. One thing I would like to see, and Paul, you brought this up as far as, well, the aura around the top teams has disappeared. I really feel like what made Wolves successful against those top teams is that 5-man back and just how dedicated they were to the shape, and then based everything around a counterattack, which was great against the top tier teams, but then they couldn't find a way to break down the Newcastles of the world and the Southamptons. Right. Yeah, Burnley. And so I feel like Nuno needs to look and go, okay, maybe against these top tier teams, maybe move back to that 3-man back line, be thinking about counterattack. And then when you're facing one of the teams that aren't in the top of the table, okay, that's when you can experiment with the 4-man back line and 4 guys up top.
And that was exciting against Arsenal, right? It was
great. Yeah.
And it was fun to see him mix it up. It was a much more, I don't know, attacking side, which was more fun to watch in that regards. But winning is always the most fun.
I think it's important for Nuno, with whichever route we go down or whichever he chooses, then it takes the opponent by surprise that you've got these flexible guys. That it makes me laugh when they put the team sheet out an hour before kickoff and they're still sticking to 3 at the back, and the whole fan base is going, they're not playing 3 at the back, that's got 4 at the back written all over it. So it'd be good if we can retain that flexibility, that we can go either depending on that first 11. But it was interesting, it reminded me before that you started talking about Liverpool's second goal, that we went from Cody having a chance in the opposition box, which is unheard of, to getting picked off and conceding on the break, which I'm not that level of detail to go back and review the goals that we conceded to figure out when that last happened. But I'm really struggling to think off the top of my head when it actually did, because guess who would be the guy, if we had 5 at the back, that would have cut that move off?
Cody. Yeah.
So you've got all of that dynamic as well to consider. Yeah, is that strength in defense better? Yeah, in that respect it is. But then do we lose that thrust of attacking intent? So tricky. This is why I'm doing a podcast as a fan. I'm not a Premier League manager. I haven't got a clue. So good luck.
Let's get a specific look at an aspect of yesterday's game during Coach's Corner with Ryan Gray.
I think obviously with the change of shape this week, again, another change in formation, with us being 4-3-3, was an interesting way to go. Obviously with Jimenez being out, he obviously has to change our formation and our shape a little bit. But that with us not also playing Silva, he's not giving us that focal point up front. So with obviously missing Raul, we played with Podence as the number 9. He's not a number 9. Podence is a player where he wants to be in between the lines, so just behind their midfield, in front of their defenders, picking up pockets of space in there. With him being the number 9 and having to go up against 2 centre backs, he's not the biggest guy in the world anyway. He's not able to play with his back to goal like Jimenez and even Silva showed against Arsenal. He held the ball up and he could bring people into play. We didn't have that focal point front to aim for. I'm not saying a target player, but someone that's going to hold the ball up and is going to bring people into play. Those 3 that played as the 3 forwards, Traore, Neto and Podence, that again they're great just in the hole, just in behind. Whereas we needed that centre forward to hold the ball up and bring them into play. That there was just something missing with that, and that extra player that would have been our centre forward was obviously in midfield. But with us not being able to hold the ball up, our 3 central midfielders couldn't really get out, and they were on the defenders' toes most of the game. And obviously when the ball did get forward, it's not being held up because it wasn't that centre forward. All 3 of those, Neto, Podence and Traore, like to run at people. Just wasn't given that opportunity because we couldn't get out. I don't understand why he didn't play Silva. He clearly doesn't think he's ready or doesn't trust him yet. But I think it would have been a much better option to play him. I understand he's young, but he showed against Arsenal that he can hold the ball up. And if we'd have had someone to hold the ball up, I think it would have been, I'm not saying we'd have won the game, but I'm saying it would have been a little bit different, where it would have allowed us to get out a little bit more instead of us being camped just defending for a lot of the game. So yeah, either January's coming up close, so either we need to dip into that loan market, or we need to or play silver. So I don't believe we can play with those front three like we did this weekend, because again, there is no focal point. There is nobody to hold the ball up, and that's been Jimenez's job for as long as he's been at the club, as well as obviously with him chipping in with a lot of goals that he has. But he brings people into play. We didn't have anybody to bring our flair players into the game this weekend, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's a rough one. We'll shake it off, and I'm sure Nuno will get them on the training ground. And he's got a good track record of when we don't have a very good result that we'll bounce back. So this is where he's going to show his coaching abilities now, and he's done it before, and I'm sure he can do it again.
So let's listen to what the opposition has to say ahead of Saturday's early morning kickoff. To do that, we're going to bring in Paul Mattey of the Space City Lions Aston Villa supporters group here in Houston. How's it going today, Paul?
Hey, how's it going, Josh? Glad to be on. Thank you for the invite.
It got a little dicey at the end of last year, but you guys hung on, got the last place in the Premier League to avoid relegation, and so far, pretty solid for you guys. Are you happy with 12th place, knowing that you still have 2 games that you got to make up?
It's a weird one. You're right. Last year, just before COVID, the game we lost against Leicester, we were absolutely shocking, and I couldn't see a way back. So the actual lockdown did us the world of good. And I think a lot of people didn't expect us to survive, but even with the last 10 games after post-lockdown, you could see the improvement there. So this season, interesting. Yeah, if you'd have told me at the start of the season we'd be in 12th with a couple of games and I'd have gone, yes, please. I'm to give you the +7 goal difference and all that type of stuff. But then the games we've drop points in have been really frustrating, where we were like completely naive against Leeds and played Brighton off the park and lost to a dodgy VAR decision, and then it was similar to West Ham where we totally outplayed them. And the games we've actually lost have been the games where we normally expect to get the points. Obviously, the Liverpool game and the Arsenal game where we just took them apart. Yeah, it's hard to know. But on the long story short, I'd take 12. Obviously, after last season, we're fun to watch at the moment, which is nice.
So speaking of that, in terms of danger men, Paul, we know all about Jack Grealish being in form for both club and country this season.
Mm-hmm.
Ollie Watkins has adjusted well as their main striker in the Premier League. Between these two guys and the rest of the team, who do we need to be on the guard against?
Just came out today that Ross Barkley won't be playing on Saturday. That's a big plus for you guys, because Barkley frees up Jack. But I've been very impressed with Ross Barkley, actually, just the way he drives up the field and takes attention, so then Jack can do his stuff. Without Barkley, I think we look a little more one-dimensional. So that's definitely a worry for us. But I don't know. In terms of other danger men, it's interesting because Trezeguet has been. He looks like he can't hit the backside of a cow with a banjo at the moment. He's had a few stinkers, but that's covering up the fact that he's really been putting in a shift. And he did have an eye for a goal last season, so I think he's a little overdue for a goal. So if you wanted me to pick somebody, I imagine Trezeguet will start, and hopefully he nicks us a goal.
So with the enforced week off, do you think this is going to be a valuable break for you guys, or is there some potential for some cobwebs that Wolves may take advantage of?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I think the break definitely did us some good in terms of it gives Ross Barkley another week. So the fewer games we miss him, the better off we'll be. But with the international break, it irritated me from Southgate not seeming to like Grealish. He's then gone to playing him 3-4 games in the space of 8 days, which I think that probably contributed to Grealish looking perhaps a little leggy in the Brighton game. But I could see it going either way. I don't think the break's going to be a big deal either way, to be honest.
It's almost be careful what you wish for with Grealish and Team England, huh?
Yeah, very much. And I think the other thing you have to remember with teams focused on Europe, we're out of the whatever they call the Coca-Cola Cup these days, the Carabao Cup. It's not like we're overburdened. I could not see it either way, basically.
And overall, as we wrap this segment up, Paul, what will make this season a good one for the Villa?
Oh, it was really nice getting a Wembley final last year. And I've always, since I was a kid, always hoped that Villa would get a good cup run, a good FA. Obviously, it'd be nice if we could be challenging for Europe, but I think the top 6, 7, 8 teams are going to be a little too tough for that. Just a solid season and a good FA Cup run, and that would make it for me.
So, Nate, what's the formation that you'd like to see next?
Against Villa, I think, and again, I'm new to all this, so even formations, I'm still learning a lot about. So I think I'd like to see us go with the attacking formation. I'd put Silva in there up front. I like Traore off the bench. I think I like him coming in the 60th minute, so maybe surround him with Podence and Neto up front. And then, probably do 4 in the back and try that against Villa. Obviously, we could still get burned because they've got Zach with Grealish. They've got some players who can hurt you, or creative, and who are top world class, especially him. But I still think they're going to concede goals. And so let's put our best foot forward and try and beat them 3-2.
We got to be, I think, as a fan base, not to generalize, but have some patience and not throw the baby out with the bathwater, that after a defeat like that, we've got to take the next opponent seriously and play against them rather than play against ourselves the previous week. And to that point, I still think Villa can be got at. And we need to bring that attacking intent. I really think we do. And either, if that is thanks to the formation that it's 4 at the back, then great, let's go for it that way. Or if we revert back to 5, then it's a team that has Aït-Nouri as the wing back, and it's very attacking from the wing back positions, and they go for it that way. So we have to be careful not to be overly defensive in both expressions of the term when it comes to Villa, and get at them.
So I think against Villa, I'd still like to see the 4-man back line again, just because I do having Adama, Podence, and Neto in there. Obviously, I think we all agree Silva needs to be in the starting 11 up top. I think a 4-2-3-1 would be pretty exciting. But Nuno's definitely shown he sticks with what's working well, and then when it doesn't, he switches everything. So I could see them going back with a 3-4-3 with, I would think, Adama and Podence up top with Fabio, and then bringing Neto off the bench, because Neto, of all of the guys, he's shown to be the most impactful coming off the bench this year.
True. Yeah, he's got the few goals to back that up as well. And that's one thing that we have got going for us, is there's more options for sure. And it's valid. I think we have that kind of double header that it's either Adama or Neto coming off the bench, that you can't rest on your laurels 60, 70 minutes, and you turn around and you see one of those guys coming on and you're thinking, shoot. And especially at the Villa, if we're able to get at them early and get a bucket 2 from their back line and They think they're getting a break, but suddenly swapping one guy out for another who's just as quick, they could really do some damage in the latter portion of the game.
And do you think Moutinho is cemented back in the starting 11? Because he's been really good. Even he still had some positive moments against Liverpool.
I don't know. He did look better. Yeah, he's looked good. He's looked a lot more consistent the last 2 matches for sure. But it feels like I don't know what Nuno's going to do every week.
It's too sensitive for me to look at it still after yesterday because Moutinho, Neves, Dendoncker, they didn't cover themselves in glory at all. I can barely remember hearing Neves' name even.
Mhm.
So if Moutinho was a 6 out of 10, that's being generous. And he was the best out of a very bad bunch. So more a reflection on the other two as well. But regardless of who we're talking in the middle of the park, and it goes back to that point about Dendoncker, these goals have got to come. This creativity's got to come back from these players. I sat next to Clive at Houston Walls yesterday watching the game, and it was that one in the first half where Moutinho had that free kick from the corner, and it was very similar to the goal he scored against Bournemouth last year.
Mhm.
Where's that gone? Where's that bit of magic from any of them? We haven't had it this season at all. Where's that cute through ball to Traore that takes the opposition completely unawares from that very same game? He squares it and it's a simple tap in to the striker if we were playing one. Where's all that gone? Where's these crappy short corners coming to it that
God.
man, it's so frustrating. I think I saw I think it was highlights of Port Vale versus Bolton in League. Are they League 2? I don't even know. League 1, League 2, whatever it was. Their short corner was so much more inventive than the Wolves have been all season. And I was just looking at that thinking they could do it. They scored from it. What's the plan with that?
Yeah, we need a free kick specialist other than Neto. I feel like Neto is the only one that's reliable. Moutinho, they're not even trying to put it in the box with him anymore. He's just straight up going short corner. I don't know if it's and Nate would probably like this reference. It's like he has the yips, maybe. I don't know. Like in baseball, when the second baseman suddenly can't throw to the first baseman. That's what I'm feeling with Moutinho is what's going on? Is he just can't get it there?
Yeah, set pieces haven't really produced anything. It feels like we need some Neves magic, right? One of his just beautiful foul just outside the box and he just puts it in the corner. We need something like that. I almost feel like, Paul, getting back to the point of going with another starting attacking lineup. I don't know the psyche of these guys, but coming back from the Raul injury was so encouraging to see that team rally. To then have a match like this against Liverpool, it just feels like they need to keep pumping confidence into that team, because you could see it turning into a lot of lack of confidence. Your captain's discouraged. He's had a howler of a game. Your best player's injured. You just wonder, let's keep pumping confidence into these young guys to try and keep the ship from going the really bad direction.
That comes back to that momentum as well, and one win bringing another, and putting those few of those wins together, and suddenly that confidence is back, and we look at team again, and we've got that strut and that attitude that we've had so much these past 2 seasons that does seem to have lacked in this one. And it only really seems to have been that first 20 minutes against Sheffield United that we had that air of confidence about us. And where's the strut gone, and where's our little arrogance in the best way of the term? We're missing that. Hopefully it comes together and it clicks and it comes back and we go on a run. But yeah, confidence is a big deal in football, and I think we're lacking at the moment.
So let's hear you guys' predictions for Villa. It seems like it could go either way, really. How about you, Nate? Let's start with you.
All right. I'm going to base mine off of whatever lineup Nuno puts out there. So if he goes with like the three at the back, wing backs, defensive, I'm going 1-0 Wolves. And we'll say Neto off the bench scores in like the 85th minute. Okay.
Oh, wow.
But if he goes with four at the back, I'm going 3-2 Wolves. They'll just trade punches all the way across.
I'm thankful for your confidence. Love both of those scenarios, however they come around. Still in the doldrums from yesterday, and it's going to take me a good while to come round. And we've got a rival who's doing a lot better than they did last year. And even though they can be got at, you've still got that element of local rivalry in there, and those games often turn into a draw. So I'm gonna think that we're gonna struggle, won't lose. It'll be a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I was thinking 1-1 as well, but you know what? I'll add a little pep to the podcast and say, you know what? 1-0 Wolves. But I don't see him scoring more than one no matter what. And until they can show me that they can score multiple times, I think I'm just always going to stick with one. It just depends on what the other team's scoring. So, Paul, where across the world are we giving some shout outs today?
We have two this week, both off Twitter. First is our good friend Chris Wood. He is Columbus, Ohio, USA. And the second is Stu from Ashmore Park in Wolverhampton. And that's exactly the type of disparity that we're looking for from these social shout outs. So folks, get in touch if you want to hear your name and location broadcast across the podcast waves. Either drop us a note on Twitter or Facebook, or good old email to hello@wholelotofwolves.com, and we'll give you a shout out in this portion of the show.
Nate, thanks for joining us this week. How can people reach you and listen to your podcast?
Yeah, we're Football Neophytes podcast, so you can find us everywhere there is. We have an Instagram. We don't really use it, so Twitter is far better. Not enough letters for us, so we're just Football Neophyte on Twitter. But yeah, our podcast, we're not Wolves based, though we spend a lot of time talking Wolves and Manchester United with my co-host, but we're helping basically every season, we're helping shepherd along someone who doesn't have a team and helping them choose a team. So our buddy Kyle is joining us this season, and hoping he'll pick not a deplorable team by the end of the year.
Like
He's seen 2 bad Wolves matches so far, so we have a long way to go to convert him to Wolves. Now I'm just hoping he doesn't pick someone too bad.
Maybe we need him not to watch if it's 2 bad games that he's watched.
It's true.
Sometimes gotta think of the greater good here.
That's right.
Thanks, Nate.
Thank you guys. It's
Thanks,
a pleasure to be on.
Have a good one.
Thanks for your continued support. If you are tuning in for the first time, please subscribe, share it with a friend who may be getting into soccer for the first time and discovering the Wolves, just like how Nate did. Also, give us a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform of choice. This helps massively to push a whole lot of Wolves out there. We'll be back again with you next week. So look after each other and up the Wolves.